Hi everyone, I'm Ginger from In Sheep's Clothing Yarn Shop in Torrington, welcoming you to another episode of Focus on Fiber. Today I have a fabulous lace cowl that is not only stunning but fairly easy to make. And so let me show you how this is. This is the cowl right here. And as you can see, it has a beautiful lace edging on it. And then the eyelets that are part of our shaping, which create a really nice design. Now, the thing that's so great about this cowl is, besides the design, which is just very interesting and a little different, is that it's knit with a really beautiful, luxurious yarn. This one here, with these yarns that are right here, they're a bombic silk, baby alpaca, and fine merino blend. So it makes it a very, very squishy, soft, just yummy yarn, something that you really want to have next to your skin. And then the cowl that's right here, which I personally absolutely love, I think it's stunning, is with this wool and silk blend that's a multicolor. So not only is it a pleasure to work with, but it's wonderful to wear. And you're getting these fabulous changes in color as you go. Now, when I was working with this one here, you could see it goes up this high here, and then it tucks inside. But you can see the different color changes that are happening here. And then it just drapes down. You could wear it up if you want, but I personally like it when it's draped like this. Now you can see that this particular yarn is a little bit heavier gauge than this yarn here is. This is more like a 4.5 to the inch, and this is more like a 5 to the inch. So this one came out a little bit smaller, and also because I tend to be a little bit looser knitter, I went down a needle size, which with this project I probably could have gone up a little bit more. But this one just automatically became a larger size. Now, the other thing that you can't see from the back is you have this triangular shape that kind of looks like a bib, sort of, or like a bandana shape. But then the back of it, this is what's so cool, is the back of it's narrow. And what's happening is that when you're working with it, you're actually working back and forth for the top part, and then you join right here, and then you start working in the round, and that's where you get this little piece here. And what's so great is that when you go to wear it and put it on, you just have this little narrow piece in the back. So if you're wearing a jacket or even a coat, you don't have a lot of bunched up fabric in the back of your neck, and yet you have this beautiful drape in the front. I can't say enough about this piece. I think it's just absolutely fabulous. Now, the pattern itself actually has two different weight yarns, a worsted weight and then like a sport DK weight. So you can choose what weight yarn you would like to use. Now, I have a piece that's in progress right now, and you can see how it's worked. So you start at the top with just a few stitches, and then your eyelet is creating your increases, and you also have an eyelet at the edge on both sides, like that. And right now I'm just about at the end of our lace here. Now this piece requires a lot of blocking, because if you don't really block it very hard, what you're really supposed to see are these like really extreme points. This one I actually undid. I have a little bit of a story for this one here. The pattern does not call for beads. So when I made my piece, I made it as the pattern called for, and I thought it was totally beautiful. And then one of my customers came in, and she had made a piece. She did it in a stunning red, except that when she brought it in, it had beads along the edge of it. And it just was gorgeous. And I looked at my piece, which I thought was gorgeous, and I said, I need to put beads on mine. So I proceeded to undo the bind off and add my beads. And now I'm happy with it. And all subsequent pieces have beads. This is actually the one I'm working on now is my third piece. Now it has an interesting start, and I'm going to show you because you start with a little tab at the very, very beginning of your piece. So I'm going to show you how that works. So we cast on 2 stitches. Okay, so I have my 2 stitches on. And you're going to knit 6 rows in garter stitch. So that means just knit, knit, knit. So I'm going to knit 2 stitches. So I'm going to be counting here so I don't lose track of my piece here. So there's 2 stitches. Okay, so that's 1 row. There's 2. Oops, get my tail caught in there. That's 2. And there's 3. And there's 4. Keep track of my tail here, it's too long. So there's 5. And 6. Okay. Now what you're going to do is you turn your piece 90 degrees. And then what you're going to do is you're going to pick up 3 stitches along the selvage edge. So you just go into those little garter bumps. So I'm going to pull up, and I'm actually going to put my glasses on so I can see what the heck I'm doing here. There we go, better. Okay, so I pull up 1 stitch, 2 stitch in my little garter bump, and then this gets a little tight in here, and then 3. Okay, and then you're going to turn it. And actually what I do here is, because it's hard to pick up, you need to pick up 2 stitches along the other selvage. So I'm actually just going to take my other needle and I'm going to pick up those 2 stitches. It's a little fussy, but once you get past this, then it's clear sailing. Okay, so there's my other 2 stitches. Okay, so now we should have 7 stitches, and what I'm going to do now is just slide these stitches onto that 1 needle, and now I have my 7 stitches. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to knit 2, purl 2. A lot of the shawls now, they use this technique to start them off. It makes a flatter piece. So knit 2, purl 2. There we go. And then I'm going to place a marker because we have to keep track of that center. I'm going to purl 1, and then I'm going to end with knit 2. There we go. So that was the tough part. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have yarn overs, which you can see again on the side pieces here, which create our increases. And you can see that there's going to be a 2 stitch in garter stitch edging, which will keep it flat. And then we'll have our center decrease, and then again our side decrease, increase with the yarn overs with our garter stitch edging. So now I'm going to knit 2. Okay. I'm going to yarn over, put my yarn over my needle. Going to knit to the marker, so the next stitch is going to be a knit. I'm going to yarn over again, slip my marker, knit 1, yarn over, and then knit to the last 2 stitches. So that means I have 1 stitch here. I'm going to yarn over again, and then knit 2. Now, like on most lace patterns, when I turn it, I'm going to, well, we're always going to maintain knit 2 at the beginning, knit 2 at the end for that edging. But the rest of the stitches are going to be purl to give us our stockinette. So I'm going to start with knit 2. And then purl into my yarn over, which creates a hole. You can see that nice big yarn over hole. Purl, purl again into that next yarn over. Purl the center stitch, going to slip my marker, purl back into that yarn over again. So we actually have 4 increases on every row, and then I'm going to end with my knit 2. And you're just going to keep repeating this until you have 87 stitches for this for this weight yarn, for the worsted weight. So now my next row, and again, I'm working this on a straight needle, and I'm going to continue working on the straight needle until I have my 87 stitches. So just so that you get the idea of what's going on here. So again, I'm knitting my 2 stitches, yarning over, going to knit, 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 yarn over before my marker, slip the marker, knit the next stitch, yarn over, knit to 2 stitches before the end, which will be our garter stitch, yarn over, knit those last 2 stitches. And you can see how it's getting bigger. Going to start getting our little triangle. So we'll just do a couple more rows so that you really get the idea of what's happening here. So again, maintaining my garter stitch selvage, knitting 2. I'm going to be purling this row. So I purl into my yarn over, purl the next stitch, purl the next stitches until I get to the marker. There's that yarn over again, slip my marker, purl. And if you're noticing how I'm purling, yes, I know I purl a little differently. Getting to my edge and with my knit 2 stitches. So now you can begin to see, well, kinda, you can begin to see I have 2 yarn overs on my edge on both sides, and I have 2 yarn overs in my center, which is going to be giving you this shaping. So I'll just do that couple more rows here. Knit 2, yarn over. After a while, you don't have to look at the pattern anymore. You just know what to do. Knit to the marker. Okay, knitting. Knit to that marker, yarn over, slip the marker, knit our center stitch, yarn over, knit across to the last 2 stitches. Go, yarn over, and knit those last 2 stitches. And what's so great about working with the multicolored yarn is as you're going, not only is your pattern showing more, but you start getting these great color changes, and that just makes you want to keep going. This has been a really fun project for me, and a lot of my customers, I have Thursday night knitting group that comes in, and all the girls, about half dozen of them, are making this project. And when they saw this, they had to make it. And this is such a great gift item too, because it's very different, and it's such a pleasure to make that it's definitely going to be one of those gifts that would be really appreciated. So I'm doing that again, just purling across. This is, again, one of those projects you can do right in front of the TV and really not have to pay too much attention as long as you have your marker. Some people like to put in, some additional markers, but I find myself this is sufficient, especially once the pattern starts to really, reveal itself. Here we go. So across. Knit our last 2 stitches. And after a while you can just see exactly what's happening here. So there's the top part that's starting to happen. Now as I go, I happen to have these double pointed needles. I actually worked, I have a circular needle here that I started it on, worked back and forth on the circular needle, and then once I got to where I wanted to join, I just worked back and forth on the circular. Now I also found that it was very, very helpful for the pattern to put markers for the repeat. I think it was like a 12-stitch repeat going across, and making sure that you have a marker, because you really have to know where your beginning and your end is for the back of the cowl, and then your marker for the center part as well. So that's doing that. Now when it comes to, you keep knitting, knitting, knitting. So you do the 87 stitches, and you can see right here is where the 87 ended, because you're just doing stockinette. Then you start your lace pattern, and that's where you go across the row, the round. Well, it's a row and then it becomes a round. And then what you're going to do is when you go to join, you're going to add an additional stitch and then knit across, and that joins your piece. And then from here on in, you're going to be working in the round, following your lace pattern. Now, when you get all the way down to the end of your work, I just realized I don't have my, well, what I do is you can have a beading needle, or if you don't have beading needles, there's these little dental, I don't know what they call them, but they're a dental little nylon piece. It's long and it has a little loop at the end, and it's for putting it's for like bridges, for when you go to floss. But they're perfect beading needles. So what I would do is I would take my yarn and put it through the end of the loop, and then take my beads. It takes about 50 beads to go around for the worsted weight, and you need, I'm not sure quite, I would get double for like the lighter weight yarn, but you should have some left over. And then what I do is I take the beads out, put it in a little dish, and I scoop up the beads on the beading needle, slide them down onto my yarn. So what I would do, so I don't have to go through too much yarn, is when I get, because this one here took 1 skein, the multicolors, you end up taking 2 balls of yarn. What I do is I leave myself about 4 to 5 arm lengths of yarn, and then I cut off the remaining yarn, and I use that end of the yarn to put my beads on. So I'm beading from the end of my yarn, and then once they're on, when you go to bind off, what you do is you bind off purlwise, because if you bind off knitwise, what happens is the beads go to the back side. So if you do it purlwise, your beads are facing you, which is what you want, because you want to be able to see them. And then I found that if I bound off 2 stitches and then slid a bead on, and then bind off 2 more stitches, slide a bead on, and do that all the way across. Now I did kind of eyeball it a little bit, and I wanted to make sure that my beads would end up where my points were. So sometimes you have to kind of fudge it a little bit so that you will get a bead. You can't get it perfectly center placed because you're sliding the beads on, but they're close enough to the center there. But you can see as you pull it down that they're all fairly evenly spaced to be in the right place. And then there's so many so many different color beads out there. This one I happened to find a nice pink that went with it. But this one here, I actually found, oh, that was the other thing too. On the heavier weight yarn on this particular silk and wool blend, because it's a little heavier, I used a size 2, 3 bead on there because you need to be able to get through, go through the both strands of yarn. On this one here, I used a size 6 bead because this yarn was a little bit thinner and it's very squishy and the bead would slide onto it. But again, I've also had people use the size 2 bead on this weight yarn. It just makes the bead stand out a little bit more, which I really kind of like. It also gives it a little bit of weight, so when you're wearing it, it tends to stay in place a little bit better for you. So anyway, I think that pretty much covers how to do this piece. Oh, the other thing, what I said before was really important was the blocking. Now, because of the shape of this, it is a little challenging when it comes to blocking. So what I found that I did was, now this piece actually needs to be blocked a little bit better because, as I said, I took the bind off and rebound it off with the beads. Also, another trick too is you need to make sure that you do it loose enough. You really should take, like this was done, the pattern calls for a size 9 needle. So use your size 9 needle. I'm sorry, I'm sounding a little raspy here. But take a size 10 needle and use that to bind off with because it gives you a looser edge, which just makes it a little more give. This one I probably bound off just a little bit tighter than I should have. I'm kind of not liking the idea of having to bind off yet again. But when it comes to the blocking, what I found was the easiest thing to do was to fold it in half like this. Okay. And then what I did was I put it on top of a towel, got my steam iron, put a nice damp towel on top of it, and then give it some really good hits of steam so that moisture would go through, penetrate your fabric, and, dampens it. And then I would take the damp cloth off. And then what you want to do is take each one of your points and pull it out. Take your next point, and we're going through 2 layers here, both sides. Take that, and then you take your pins. You could do this on top of a towel. You could do this on a blocking mat or even an ironing board, and keep your pin in there. And then you do this all the way across with each point that you have, like that, and then here. And then pin it down and let it dry like that. So then it should keep your points a lot better than mine are right at the moment. And then also just kind of block this out, straighten this out and just let it dry. And then when it's dry, then you'll have a nice shape like this, and you'll be really happy with the shape of it. But otherwise, I've seen people that have tried to, do it standing up, put something in here, and I just think that way's a lot easier, less headache. But anyway, this luxury piece is something that I hope that you will consider making, maybe for the holidays. And not only will you enjoy working with your luxury yarns, and you could do something that's like a bamboo or something that's going to be really drapey, anything that would be the right gauge and that makes you happy to work with and that will make a really lovely gift for yourself or for somebody else. So I hope you give it a try, and I look forward to seeing you again at the next episode of Focus on Fiber. Thanks.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.